Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
We are diving into one of the most, just compelling and confounding paradoxes in modern literature,
Absolutely. Yeah.
achieving massive, era-defining fame and critical canonization,
Right. While at the same time,
while simultaneously insisting on this radical, almost militant anonymity.
and we are talking, of course, about the elusive Italian novelist Elena Ferrante.
It truly is a singular case study, isn't it? You have this writer,
Mm-hmm.
named one of Time's 100 most influential people back in 2016. Her work defines contemporary fiction.
To the point where the New York Times recently ranked one of her books as the single best book of the 21st century.
The #1 book.
Number one. Yet the person behind the name, Elena Ferrante, remains completely, and I think you have to say successfully hidden.
And that tension, that's the central hook for me. The,
Yeah.
the refusal to participate in the machinery of celebrity.
Yeah.
The sheer cultural impact of someone who just fundamentally refuses to be culturally present.
And she has a very clear philosophy that drives this. It's not just a whim.
Not at all. She stated that anonymity is absolutely essential to her process.
And she makes this bold sort of aesthetic claim that, and I think it's worth quoting,
Go for it.
books, once they are written, have no need of their authors.
Wow. That's a challenge, right?
It's a challenge issued to the entire system. It forces the reader and, maybe more importantly, the critics, the prize committees,
The whole marketing apparatus.
the entire marketing apparatus of the publishing industry to confront the text and only the text.
You can't filter her work through a biography or a public persona or some book tour narrative.
Nope. It is, conceptually at least, an attempt at achieving pure literature.
Though, as we're about to discuss, the public and the media have relentlessly tried to fail that experiment.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's our mission today, for you, the listener.
Yeah.
We've pulled together the full chronology of her career, charting how her themes evolve.
We'll also examine the sparse biographical details that we actually do know.
And then we're going to conduct a deep dive into the intense, the controversial, and frankly, the ethically debated arguments around the three major theories of who she really is.
So before we get into the novels themselves, we really need to establish the knowns.
The ground rules.
Exactly. The actual biography is incredibly thin. It's mostly gathered from her own Fuchard statements, in interviews and letters over the years.
We're dealing with a ghost.
But a highly specific ghost.
Right, so what we know is minimal. Ferrante is Italian. She writes exclusively in Italian. Her literary career officially kicked off in 1992.
And critically, she has stated she was born in Naples.
Which is so important. Naples isn't just a setting for her. It's a character. A claustrophobic, violent, deeply formative character in all of her work.
And she's also identified herself as the daughter of a seamstress and mentioned having 3 sisters.
And that is, truly, that's about the extent of the concrete, self-disclosed biographical detail.
Here's the immediate contrast, right? Her writing is not simple. It's layered, complex.
Incredibly dense.
Incredibly dense with references to classical literature, to philosophy, to history. Her prose just carries the weight of a highly educated mind.
Which has led critics and scholars to pretty strongly infer that she must have completed extensive academic study.
Right. Likely specializing in literature, probably classics, just because the breadth of her knowledge base is, it's far too extensive for someone without that kind of formal classical training.
So we begin with this profile. An Italian woman, likely Neapolitan, likely classically educated, who's been producing this intensely psychological and critically lauded fiction for, over 3 decades now?
All while maintaining absolute silence about who she is. It just sets the stage perfectly for a career that's defined by the secrets her characters keep.
Mirroring the massive secret she keeps herself. So let's jump into that early career, because before the Neapolitan Quartet became this global benchmark, Ferrante was already, she was already establishing herself as a master of these intense psychological narratives.
Absolutely. Always centered on the complexities of what you could call feminine crisis.
And always against that evocative and, I think, oppressive backdrop of Naples.
Her first novel, Troubling Love L'Amor Molesto, which came out in 1992, immediately set that tone.
That psychological intensity, right? The mystery, the deep, often very unsettling family secrets.
It really announced a voice that was completely unafraid to expose the uncomfortable truths of womanhood.
And this debut, it started small. It actually came from a short story, didn't it? Delia's Elevator.
It did, but the novel form really allowed her to expand and explore the central mystery. The protagonist, Delia, She returns home to Naples.
following the incredibly bizarre and mysterious death of her mother.
And the nature of that death is so crucial because it's just a brilliant piece of symbolism.
Tell us about it.
Delia's mother, a poor, working-class seamstress, is found drowned on an Italian beach wearing only one single item of luxury clothing.
Which was a high-end designer bra.
Exactly. This strange, contradictory detail is what propels Delia's investigation into her mother's life.
A life that turns out to be just steeped in trauma and secrets.
And a lifetime of hidden aspirations and compromises, all driven by class and gender expectations in Naples.
That clash, I mean, the mundane reality of the seamstress and the impossible luxury of the bra, it just speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It says everything about the buried aspirations and shame that characterize her female protagonists.
And the novel was a success right away, at least in Italy.
Oh, a critical success. It secured the prestigious Premio Persida Isola di Arturo El Samorante. A major, albeit anonymous, literary voice had arrived.
And it was a voice focused squarely on the dark, complex, interior lives of women.
And that intense focus on what you might call domestic devastation, it just solidified a decade later with her second novel,
In 2002, The Days of Abandonment.
I giorni dell'abbandono.
If Troubling Love was about inherited trauma, this one, I mean, this is maybe the most visceral portrayal of immediate, sudden emotional collapse in her entire early body of work.
It is a devastating read. It centers on Olga, whose life, which seems stable, just completely collapses.
When her husband of 15 years abruptly leaves her.
And what makes it so painful is just the banality of the reason. He just leaves her for a younger woman.
And this sends Olga, a mother, living this middle-class existence, into a catastrophic, just unrecoverable downward spiral. It completely rips apart the domestic facade.
And this is where we see Ferrante's growing confidence in psychological detail. The narrative tracks Olga's complete mental fragmentation,
She becomes haunted by these visceral visions of abandoned women she saw as a child.
which reinforces that her present despair is rooted in this cultural history of female helplessness.
Her spiral isn't just grief either, it's terrifying. It includes hallucination, genuine fear of being poisoned by her neighbor.
And as the sources noted, her descent into what they called grim sexual self-abasement with her aging neighbor.
That kind of unrelenting emotional and carnal candor. That refusal to sanitize female despair.
That is exactly what Janet Maslin highlighted in her review for the New York Times. She referenced Simone de Beauvoir's classic work on female existential suffering, The Woman Destroyed.
The prose is so controlled, yet the subject matter is just pure chaos and agony. That tension is key to her style.
She writes about devastation with an almost clinical precision.
And this exploration of the profound difficulties of traditional female roles, it continues to shift with her third novel, The Lost Daughter.
La Figlia Oscura from 2006. Here, the thematic focus moves from being the one who is abandoned
To exploring the consequences of being the one who abandons.
Exactly. The protagonist, Lita, is on what seems like a relaxing vacation on an Italian beach.
But her peace is disrupted when she becomes intensely, almost unhealthily obsessed with the nearby family, particularly the young mother and her daughter.
And this external observation, it acts as a trigger. It forces Lita to confront her own past as a young mother.
And the core conflict that's revealed is Lita's previously hidden history.
She reflects on the genuine existential despair and exhaustion she felt as a young mother, a feeling so profound and consuming.
That it led her to make a completely unconventional and really taboo decision.
She left her family for a shocking 2 years.
This novel just tackles the internal, unmentionable reality that motherhood can feel like a devastating psychological prison.
It's an idea that's so rarely tackled in fiction with that level of stark honesty.
So you have this trilogy of early works, all deeply rooted in Naples, all exploring the intersection of class, gender, motherhood, and secret trauma.
And they show the exponential growth of her narrative power.
Hmm.
You can gauge this power by its lasting legacy,
Right. The Lost Daughter was adapted into that highly acclaimed 2021 film.
which was the directorial debut of actress Maggie Gyllenhaal. It earned huge critical success, including the USC Scripter Award, which just validated the narrative universal emotional resonance.
So in 2006, Ferrante had already produced 3 intensely intimate, critically successful novels that just utterly challenged the traditional literary view of female domesticity.
All while maintaining her airtight secrecy. And this growing fame, it led to a compromise of sorts.
That's right. Having explored the raw honesty Ferrante achieves in her fiction, it is fascinating to see that honesty partially applied to her own life.
It gave us a fleeting, fragmented look behind the curtain.
With the publication of her first nonfiction work, La Frantomalia, published in 2003, right in the middle of this early run.
It was eventually translated into English as Frontumalia, a writer's journey in 2016.
And the title itself is just a perfect piece of synthesis.
It is. It's a Neapolitan dialect word that translates roughly to a scattering of fragments or broken pieces.
It's a term her mother used to describe feelings of internal chaos and fragmentation.
A perfect description for the lives of her protagonists and, maybe her own public presentation.
And the book is a collection, right?
It is. Letters she exchanged with her publisher, private essays, reflections, and some very selective interviews. It gave the public just enough information to keep the mystery intriguing.
Without actually revealing anything.
Exactly. And it was so popular that it was republished in expanded versions in 2007 and again in 2015, growing right alongside her fame.
And within those collected letters, we start to glean the few widely accepted facts. James Wood, who reviewed the collection, he summarized the key takeaways.
She confirmed she grew up in Naples, so that centrality of setting was locked in. She confirmed she has a classics degree, which validated the critical assumption based on her dense literary knowledge.
And she also admitted to having lived outside Italy for periods, which suggests a broader cultural view than just her Neapolitan upbringing.
She also explicitly referred to being a mother in those letters.
Which adds another layer of resonance to her fiction dealing with the burdens and joys of motherhood.
But maybe the most telling detail about her daily professional life was this one specific statement she made.
Which was?
I study, I translate, I teach, in addition to writing.
And this one line, this became an absolutely crucial clue for the investigative reporters and scholars who later tried to unmask her.
It gave them a professional profile to focus on.
It gave the investigators something concrete to chase. They were looking for an educated woman, a mother, intimately involved in academic or literary work.
Based in, or at least very familiar with, Naples. It's the only self-portrait we have, and it's composed entirely of these professional and geographic fragments.
And just to round out this period, we should mention she also published a short children's novel in 2007.
Right, La Spiaggia di Notte, or The Beach at Night, the simple, poignant story of a forgotten doll. It just demonstrates her range, even within her self-imposed constraints.
Okay, so if the early novels were the foundation, showing her mastery of the intimate psychological portrait.
Then the 4 books that followed were The Earthquake.
Exactly. The earthquake that secured her global literary legacy. Let's move to the literary milestone that just secured her status as a global phenomenon, the Neapolitan novels.
This quartet defined her career and elevated her work to a whole different echelon.
Absolutely. The series was published sequentially between 2011 and 2015, and the sheer scale it's epic. It moves far beyond the single protagonist focus of her earlier work.
It follows the sprawling, interconnected life story of 2 perceptive and frankly intelligent girls, Lila and Lenu.
Both born into poverty in Naples in 1944.
And the narrative covers over 60 years. It charts the evolution of their complex, often toxic, always brilliant friendship.
The core tension of the entire series is that push and pull between these 2 central figures.
And how they both attempt to define themselves and carve out successful lives against what the sources describe as a violent and stultifying culture.
The oppressive poverty, the entrenched organized crime, the pervasive toxic masculinity of their neighborhood in post-war Naples, it's all there.
It's the ultimate scaled-up Bildungsroman, but it's twinned. You have Lenu, or Elena Greco, who is the narrator.
She seeks escape through education and literature, achieving a kind of mainstream success.
And then you have Lila, Raffaella Cerullo, the true raw genius who is trapped by her economic and emotional environment, but possesses this transcendent power that Lenu can never quite access or emulate.
Their friendship is a constant battleground for class, for intellect, for loyalty, for identity.
The scope is just immense.
So let's just list the 4 volumes that make up this literary epic for everyone.
First, My Brilliant Friend from 2011.
Then, The Story of a New Name in 2013.
Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay in 2014.
And it concludes with The Story of the Lost Child in 2015.
And the critical reception for this quartet was, it was overwhelming. It quickly moved beyond typical literary acclaim.
It established itself as a cultural phenomenon.
For sure. The final book, The Story of the Lost Child, was nominated for Italy's most prestigious literary honor, the Strega Prize.
It also got nominated for the International Booker Prize and was named one of the New York Times 10 best books of 2015.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and this confirms her lasting, defining impact.
In 2024, the New York Times undertook a major reassessment of the current literary landscape.
And they ranked My Brilliant Friend as the #1 best book, the definitive #1 in its list of 100 best books of the 21st century.
Which is just staggering.
For a book published just over a decade ago to be immediately canonized in that way, placed above thousands of other candidates, I mean, what does that tell us about the current critical landscape?
Well, critics usually resist canonizing works so quickly. It takes decades for true perspective to set in.
Exactly.
I think it just speaks to the immediate, visceral relevance of the themes. Vulture also listed the overall series as one of the 12 new classics since the year 2000.
It became the yardstick by which contemporary fiction was measured?
And not because it was trendy, but because it tapped into something timeless about female ambition and limitation.
Alyssa Chappell, reviewing the final book, captured this perfectly. She just said, "This is Ferrante at the height of her brilliance."
And that brilliance, it's rooted in the thematic richness and the sheer breadth of the narrative.
Roger Cohen, in the New York Review of Books, he synthesized the key achievement. He noted the quartet is both introspective and sweeping, personal and political.
And that dual focus is so rare and so difficult to execute well.
And that political scope is fundamental to understanding the environment that Leela and Lenu exist in.
Right. The narrative covers more than 60 decades of Italian history and directly links the two women's personal lives and their life choices to Italy's immense historical upheavals.
We're talking about poverty, class warfare, the revolutionary fervor that swept the country.
Specifically, the sources mention the revolutionary violence of the leftist Red Brigades and the rise of radical feminism in Italy.
And for context, the Red Brigades were an Italian Marxist-Leninist terrorist organization, active mainly in the 70s and 80s.
Their goal was to force the Italian state into revolutionary action through violence, kidnappings, assassinations.
They created a nationwide state of anxiety, political polarization, and chaos.
And by weaving their actions, the protests, the rise of feminism, into the personal lives of Leela and Lenu,
whose family members often align with different, conflicting political or even criminal factions.
Ferrante ensures that their personal struggle for identity becomes an accurate, high-stakes reflection of the national narrative.
And the growing popularity of the series, especially among female readers and highly respected female writers.
Zadie Smith, Jhumpa Lahiri are cited as major fans.
That popularity is rooted in the way the work describes domestic experiences that are often, and I'm quoting here, underexplored in fiction.
Specifically, experiences like vivid sexual jealousy, deep-seated shame, the quiet sacrifices women make.
Ferrante refuses to flinch from the messiness and intensity of these domestic and internal conflicts.
She provides this unvarnished voice to experiences many readers recognize in their own internal lives, but rarely see articulated so candidly in literature.
And this is why the series has been described as euphorically feminine.
It's not just about portraying suffering.
Not at all. It's about portraying the immense, complicated power and agency that exists within female bonds, intellect, and sheer will, often in the face of deep, pervasive male corrosion and societal oppression.
Darren Franich called the novels the series of the decade.
Because they so clearly reflected the conflicts of the 21st century. Conflicted, revisionist, desperate, hopeful, revolutionary, euphorically feminine.
That phrase, euphorically feminine, it just perfectly captures the raw, celebratory, yet complicated energy of Leela and Lena's bond.
A bond that is constantly strained but remains the central, defining relationship of their lives. More important than any husband or career.
And critics universally praise the conclusion, which, as we know, is often the hardest part of any epic series to land.
Judith Shulevitz praised the final installment for cleverly circling back to Leela and Lenu's childhood games, creating this powerful sense of cyclical tragedy and closure.
And Maureen Corrigan sealed that assessment, calling the ending perfect devastation.
It's clear that the anonymity wasn't an obstacle to her success.
No. In fact, by demanding that the work stand alone, she amplified the power of the characters, leaving only the devastation and the brilliance for the reader to reckon with. Okay, so now we arrive at the central, high-stakes mystery of Elena Ferrante's career.
The big one.
Why she maintains this radical anonymity and the ethically charged, intense efforts the media, academics, and investigative reporters have made to unmask her.
It really represents the modern friction point between an author's declared right to privacy.
Especially in an age of intense public scrutiny.
And the public's insatiable, almost pathological hunger for biographical context to explain genius.
And Ferrante herself has actually provided dual justifications for her secrecy over the years.
The first motive she shared is quite simple and human. She just admitted to shyness.
She said, I was frightened at the thought of having to come out of my shell.
Which is a perfectly understandable reason for a non-celebrity to want to avoid the intense global spotlight that comes with that level of success.
But the deeper reason, the more philosophical one, is what she continues to champion,
She transformed a personal preference into an aesthetic principle.
arguing that anonymity is a precondition for her work and that keeping her physical identity and personal life out of the public square is key to her writing process.
She describes this feeling so profoundly in her letters. She said, "Once I knew that the completed book would make its way in the world without me. It made me see something new about writing.
I felt as though I had released the words from myself.
Free from the constraints of her physical, celebrity-bound presence."
That is a statement of artistic liberation. It's a refusal to allow the writer's persona to overshadow the art.
But the moment she achieved global recognition with the Neapolitan novels, her claim became a magnet for ambitious researchers, reporters, and linguists.
Who viewed her anonymity not as a philosophy but as a puzzle to be solved.
Exactly.
So let's start with theory number one. This was the philological detective work, which was maybe the most academic and traditional approach.
Right, this was early 2016. The Italian novelist and renowned scholar Marco Santagata, a professor at the University of Pisa, he published a paper detailing his theory.
And it was based purely on textual evidence.
His method was rooted in philological analysis. So for you, the listener, philology is the study of language and historical sources, seeking to establish authenticity and meaning through detailed textual clues.
So what clues did he focus on?
He focused on two things: a close study of very specific, intimate details about the Pisa cityscape that appear in her novels.
Details you would only know if you lived there at a certain time.
Exactly. And second, the author's expert, deep-seated knowledge of modern Italian politics.
And Santagata's conclusion was highly specific from this.
He concluded that the author had to have lived in Pisa but must have left by 1966 because the descriptive details matched that specific time frame.
Based on this profile, he identified the probable author as a Neapolitan professor, Marcello Marmo.
Who studied in Pisa from 1964 to 1966. The profile, Neapolitan, academic, Pisan connection, it matched perfectly with the clues from Frantamalia.
A completely compelling theory based on literary and biographical triangulation.
But it was immediately denied, both by Professor Marmo and by Ferrante's publisher, EO.
So an intriguing dead end, which forced the literary world to shift away from academic detection to something much more abrasive.
A financial investigation.
That was theory number two, led by the investigative reporter Claudio Gatti in October 2016.
And Gatti's method was not literary or linguistic. It was purely forensic. He was trying to trace the money trail that massive international royalties leave behind.
He relied on financial records related to real estate transactions, looking for discrepancies, and, crucially, tracking royalty payments.
Which, for an author of her stature, would be substantial.
And this methodology led him to a definitive conclusion, that Anita Raja, a Rome-based translator, was the real author behind the pseudonym.
And Raja had key connections that made her a prime suspect. She was known to have worked as a copy editor for Ferrante's publisher, EO Publishing.
She also edited books by Domenico Starnone.
Gatti claimed the financial trail showed a significant, sudden increase in payments flowing to Raja's accounts that perfectly aligned with the Neapolitan novel's global success.
And here's where we hit that critical thinking moment.
Because Gatti's exposé triggered a massive global controversy regarding the ethics of exposure.
Or what many critics immediately termed doxing, the publication of private identity information against the subject's will.
Many in the literary world viewed the article as a fundamental violation of privacy and an attack on an artistic choice. They slammed Gatti.
They argued that the public's desire for gossip does not supersede the artist's right to privacy.
The novelist Jeanette Winterson was particularly fierce in her denunciation. She called the investigation malicious and sexist.
She argued that the impulse to expose Ferrante was rooted in an obsessional outrage at the success of a writer female who decided to write, publish, and promote her books on her own terms.
The underlying implication being that a powerful, successful woman's ability to control her own narrative was viewed as an unacceptable challenge to the established, mostly male-dominated media system.
Gatti, for his part, he defended his actions.
He argued that Ferrante had relinquished her right to disappear by engaging in public dialogue through interviews in Frantamalia and by sometimes offering contradictory statements about her life.
So he's saying she was feeding public interest while hiding?
His defense was that if you play the anonymity game on the world stage, you invite the investigation.
But the ethical debate remained heated. Does selling millions of books mean you forfeit your privacy?
Or is the fact that she proved one could achieve global literary dominance without a face the real threat that triggered the attack?
Regardless of the ethics, the identity of Anita Raja became inextricably linked to Ferrante in the public mind.
But the complexity only deepened with theory number 3, the linguistic analysis.
In September 2017, just a year after the financial expose, a team of scholars, computer scientists, and linguists at the University of Padua weighed in.
Using the most modern methodology available, pure data science.
Their approach was purely statistical. It utilized authorship attribution models, or AMs.
So for you, the listener, AMs analyze unconscious habitual writing patterns, things like the frequency of common function words, the A of syntax complexity, average sentence length.
Things an author does without thinking.
Exactly. These patterns are often more reliable indicators of authorship than plot or theme.
And the Padua team analyzed a massive corpus.
150 novels written in Italian by 40 different authors. They fed the machine sophisticated attribution models against 7 of Ferrante's published books.
And they didn't just analyze Ferrante and Raja. They included dozens of other Italian contemporary writers to establish a baseline.
And the computer's highly specific conclusion.
That Domenico Starnone, Anita Raja's husband, who is himself an acclaimed author and journalist, was the probable author of the Ferrante novels.
The stylistic fingerprints of Starnone's unconscious writing habits matched Ferrante's much more closely than any of the other samples.
This just threw maximum doubt onto the financial theory.
Right. If the prose structure most closely resembles Starnone's, does that mean Raja merely handled the financial aspects while Starnone was the primary ghostwriter?
Or was it a collaboration? Or was the entire corpus a sophisticated imitation designed to mislead?
The academic, computer-based analysis just completely complicated the neat, financially driven conclusion.
And throughout all this highly gendered speculation, Ferrante herself has repeatedly addressed the persistent suggestion that the success and power of her fiction means she must actually be a man.
She pointed out to Vanity Fair that questions about her gender are rooted in a presumed weakness of female writers.
That the public can't seem to believe a woman could write with such sweeping power and ambition unless she had a man's help, or was a man all along.
It's the ultimate irony, isn't it? A woman writes the defining fictional work about female complexity, only to have the complexity of her success attributed to a male figure.
And just for a bit of colorful context to all the chaos.
We should probably mention the famous prankster Tommaso de Benedetti,
An Italian journalist known for publishing fake celebrity interviews. He jumped into the fray.
and published a fake interview with Raja on a Spanish daily's website, purportedly confirming she was Ferrante.
And naturally, the publisher had to immediately issue a denial, calling it a fake.
This entire mystery has become a highly publicized, multi-methodological circus.
Proving that the search for the author's identity became nearly as famous as the books themselves, despite her absolute best efforts to prevent it.
So what does all this mean for the literature? I mean, despite the continuous, distracting identity debate, Ferrante has continued to write.
And her body of work has only expanded its literary and visual legacy, proving that the words truly do not need the author's face.
Her first novel, after completing the monumental quartet, The Lying Life of Adults, was published in 2019.
It continued her exploration of Naples and adolescence, playing with that standardized teenage girl coming-of-age structure.
But infused with her signature psychological intensity and focus on a female protagonist reckoning with adult deceit.
She's also continued to experiment with nonfiction formats and her public intellectual presence, always maintaining the anonymity.
In 2019, she published Incidental Inventions, which was a compilation of the columns she wrote for the English newspaper, The Guardian.
And these columns offered short, poignant reflections on writing and culture, providing further filtered glimpses into her mind.
And most recently, her work in the margins, On the Pleasures of Reading and Writing, was published in 2022.
This collection was based on a series of lectures she wrote for the prestigious 2021 Umberto Eco lecture series at the University of Bologna.
And what's so fascinating about In the Margins is how perfectly it demonstrates her philosophy. She wrote the highly intellectual, celebrated lectures,
But they were read aloud by the Italian actress Manuela Mandracchia.
Ferrante's voice was present in its words, but physically absent. She maintained her anonymous presence even in a public academic setting established in honor of another great reclusive mind, Umberto Eco.
And beyond the printed word, her narratives have proven incredibly adaptable, confirming her widespread cultural dominance.
Her earliest works were quickly optioned, demonstrating the inherent drama in her plots. Troubling Love became the film Nasty Love in 1995.
And The Days of Abandonment became a film of the same title in 2005.
And of course, the emotional power of The Lost Daughter found tremendous success with Maggie Gyllenhaal's 2021 adaptation, earning the USC Scripter Award and widespread Oscar buzz.
Which showed her ability to cross over into American prestige cinema.
But the truly defining visual legacy rests, predictably, with the Neapolitan novels.
Those books demanded an epic visual treatment that could do justice to the decades of history and the thousands of emotional intricacies.
Yes, the 32-part miniseries, My Brilliant Friend, was an enormous undertaking. It was co-produced by the Italian networks RAI and TimVision and the American premium cable network, HBO.
The first 2 episodes actually premiered at the prestigious Venice Film Festival in 2018.
The miniseries was a massive critical and commercial success, faithfully adapting the books across 4 ambitious seasons from 2018 to 2024.
The fact that her work can support a major international HBO series shows that the strength of the narrative is so enormous, the author's face is literally unnecessary for massive financial and cultural success.
It essentially proves her central claim.
And the adaptation train just kept moving.
Netflix recently got into the Ferrante business, releasing a drama series based on the lying life of adults in January 2023.
These adaptations prove that the emotional power of her stories, combined with that sweeping historical backdrop, translates seamlessly to the format of prestige television.
And all this success is supported by continued major literary honors, despite her insistence that the author is irrelevant.
She was shortlisted for the 2016 Man Booker International Prize for the story of the lost child.
She was also the recipient of the 2016 Independent Publisher Book Award Gold Medal for Literary Fiction, again for the story of the lost child.
And it's important to note this is also a testament to the quality of the translation, largely done by Anne Goldstein,
who translated many of her major works, allowing her Italian genius to reach a global English-speaking audience.
It really is a complete literary legacy, critically celebrated, commercially dominant, and visually adapted, built entirely without a public face.
A modern triumph of radical self-effacement in a world obsessed with celebrity.
So we've covered a remarkable career, from the stark psychological realism of her early novels,
detailing abandonment and domestic collapse,
to the sprawling historical epic of the Neapolitan Quartet, which explored the full emotional and political scope of the 20th century.
And what stands out is the singular achievement. Ferrante created a globally recognized body of work that truly defined contemporary literary fiction.
A claim solidified by that New York Times #1 ranking for the 21st century.
And she did all this while remaining absolutely steadfast in her philosophical belief that the author is irrelevant to the finished book.
We reviewed the primary themes of her work complex, often toxic female relationships, the intensity of domestic and existential despair,
and how these personal struggles intersect with sweeping Italian political upheavals.
The genius of Ferrante is that she managed to write books that are both critically dense, demanding philological and linguistic analysis,
and wildly popular, transcending the literary fiction bubble by speaking honestly about profound, often shameful experiences of womanhood, friendship, and ambition.
But the elephant in the room remains the identity debate.
For sure. The attempts to unmask her involved high-level, multidisciplinary methods. A literary scholar using P's and street maps and political knowledge.
An investigative reporter using financial records and royalty payments.
And a team of academics using machine learning models to analyze function words.
We saw the intense ethical backlash against reporters who tried to violate her privacy, a backlash that often focused on the gendered nature of the attack.
But the strongest literary critiques of her work, the ones that earned her that NYT ranking, consistently describe her writing as euphorically feminine.
Rich with unvarnished female experience and psychological truth.
This raises the final important question for you, the listener, to mull over.
We have multiple competing scientifically and financially supported theories on the author's identity. A Neapolitan professor, a female translator, or her male novelist husband, Domenico Starnone.
So, given the strength of the literary analysis, praising the work's profound exploration of female secrets and inner lives, does knowing the true profile of the writer, man or woman, academic or translator, change how we interpret the candor and depth she so convincingly captured in her fiction?
It forces us to ask, is the power of the book truly independent of the identity of the person who wrote it, just as she argued.
Or does the fact that we try so hard to solve the mystery prove that we fundamentally require a biography to properly appreciate the genius of the work?
That's a fascinating note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the elusive brilliance and intentional silence of Elena Ferrante.